Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to session 3 of the Mountain Within Leadership Summit as part of the Nairobi Central SDA Church Camp meeting. It is a pleasure to welcome you back to this Leadership Summit. And I just want to basically recap very, very quickly what we have covered in the previous 2 sessions, just to give you a taster in case you missed it. Today we will be focusing on resilience, a hallmark of a true leader. Resilience, a hallmark of a true leader. In the first session, we talked about leadership in the cosmic context. It is so important for us to get the foundation straight. In the universe, the governing principle is love, because God is love. And his modus operandi we talked about is delegation and free choice. Each one of us, as God's creation, have free choice. And we make decisions every day for good or maybe not so good. The protagonist, as in any good story, but this is a story of eternal significance. The protagonist is Lucifer, that beautiful angel who fell and took 1/3 of the angels from heaven with him. His modus operandi, as opposed to love, is utter selfishness. It's all about I. And the way of working of Satan is force, manipulation, and fear. The choice every day is ours, because even after the cross, this earth is a territory under dispute. Our minds are the battlefields, and we are called to make choices every day, either for good or for not so good, for evil. So in the cosmic context, leadership in the cosmic context, we said ultimately the leader takes the blame for what happens under his or her watch. And on the cross, Jesus took the blame for our sins. He took the blame for sin entering into this world under his watch. And he said, "It is finished. It is finished. I have disarmed the rulers and principalities of this world." And God is looking for leaders. He is looking for people, because he said to his disciples in the Great Commission, "Go and teach all nations." Go. In other words, conquer nations in the power of love. And so God is looking for leaders. God is looking for stewards. And we said leadership. Leadership is influence. You probably have asked yourself, am I a leader? And we said leadership is the process of influence. Anytime we seek to influence the thinking, behavior, or development of people toward accomplishing a goal in their personal or professional lives, you are taking on the role as a leader. Ken Blanchard coined those words, and they are truly important. Leadership is critical. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And this COVID-19 crisis, this pandemic that we find ourselves in, demonstrates this so clearly, how important leadership is. Leadership ability is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness, according to John Maxwell. And because if you think about it, let's say on a scale from 1 to 10, you are a level 5 leader. If you are a level 5 leader, you are not going to attract people to work under you or in your circle who are 8s, 9s. No, you're going to attract people who are, let's say, a 2 or a 3. So if you increase your leadership level, your effectiveness, everything makes a difference. So remember, leadership is a spiritual gift. It's a stewardship. Leadership is temporary, and God holds leaders accountable. So with that backdrop, let's now move into resilience. Why is resilience so important? Galatians 6:9, the Apostle Paul tells us, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. If we do not give up. How many times have we felt this is too hard? It's too much. I am just going to give up. I can relate to that. I think we have all been in situations where things just felt too overwhelming, too pressing. And Paul is telling us, hey, I know how you feel, but keep going. Don't become weary in doing good. And then we look at the end of the Bible in Revelation, where the Apostle John is writing this incredible book on the Isle of Patmos, completely isolated in this horrific situation. Today it looks stunningly beautiful, but at the time it was a prison colony. But in this place, God revealed himself to John, and he said, be faithful even to the point of death, and I will give you life as your victor's crown. So be faithful, keep persevering. I'm choosing a couple quotes in this this lecture from Ellen White. Ellen White, a prolific author, the world's most translated female author. She is a prophet. She was a co-founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and we are very blessed to have her writings. I'm using a couple references from her books. This one is from the Ministry of Healing. We can do nothing. How much? Nada. Nothing without courage and perseverance. We can do nothing without courage and perseverance. And then again in Ministry of Healing, she says, Christian life is more than many take it to be. It does not consist wholly in gentleness, patience, meekness, and kindness. Those graces are essential. But there is need also of courage, force, energy, and perseverance. There is need of courage, energy, and perseverance. The English poet Joseph Addison said, if you wish to succeed in life, make perseverance your bosom friend, experience your wise counselor, caution your elder brother, and hope your guarding genius, but make perseverance your bosom buddy. We often look at people who have achieved great things and we wonder, how did they get there? How could they accomplish these incredible things? And Albert Einstein, of course, the famous scientist with his funny disheveled looks that we all recognize, he said, it's not that I'm so smart. It's just that I stay with a problem longer. Now let that sink in for a moment. If the great Einstein could say, I'm not that smart, and he probably was one of the smartest people of the 20th century at least, he says, I just stay with the problem longer. I stay with the problems longer. Einstein also said, I question a given every day. It's that perseverance, that persistence, that attention to detail that's working with the issues. The well-known English evangelist or pastor Charles Spurgeon, he said, it was by persistence that the snail made it into the ark. Have you ever wondered how all these animals managed to make it into the ark? Well, Spurgeon proffers that maybe it was by persistence that the snail slowly got into the ark. You know, we often talk about the road that we often take, the road of least resistance. In this next slide that I'm showing you, The cartoonist says the road to failure is actually the path of least persistence. How many times have we given up too soon? Is the road to failure really the path of least persistence? We see things succeeding sometimes in the most inhospitable, in the most unusual circumstances. There may be a little crack in the sidewalk and a plant pushes up. It is persistence. It's actually looking at what can I do with what I have. Challenges are what makes life interesting, and overcoming them is what makes life meaningful. Challenges are what makes life interesting, and overcoming them is what makes life meaningful. As I said last time, this lecture series, the summit, is based on the book The Mountain Within. This chronicles an expedition of disabled and non-disabled climbers up Mount Kilimanjaro. My husband and I had the privilege of producing also a beautiful award-winning film. But this book was really born not because I wanted to write it, actually. When I was asked to write a book, I basically felt I have no time, I have no energy for this. How in the world am I going to do this? And what am I going to say? But I was very confident that there was enough content. But I was so concerned whether I could overcome the challenges of actually writing a book. And particularly the way I had envisioned it, that I would write the story of the climb to Mount Kilimanjaro like a novel. So it kind of traces through the entire book, but then also leadership lessons from my own experience and conversations as a third part with political or leaders, business leaders that, in my view, embodied that particular lesson. So putting all these things together, I actually wrote every weekend for about 10 months. It was a labor of love. But that's what Emerson is saying here in the quote that I just shared. Challenges are what makes life interesting, and overcoming them is what makes life meaningful. It's only when you overcome challenges that are involved, for example, in writing a book, that at the end of the day you can hold that book in your hand and say, I have written that. This is chronicling an experience that is near and dear to my heart. And when you actually go and people stop you in the grocery store, in some supermarket, and say, I read your book and it changed my life, it makes all the difference. It gives meaning to the challenges. It gives meaning to overcoming the difficulties. So what does a resilient person look like? What are the traits of a resilient person? First of all, it's an attitude of perseverance. We actually have to choose to persevere. In the face of wanting to give up, my husband and I exercise every day, or just about every day, and the hardest thing is always getting going and actually choosing that I am going to continue to persevere. I'm going to continue to jump out and exercise. That is a choice. It's an attitude of perseverance. Secondly, resilient people have courage. In the face of adversity, in the face of difficulties, resilient people have courage. Resilient people also know how to reinvent themselves. If this way doesn't work, then maybe we need to try this way. The idea of self-reinvention. And it's one of the reasons why people tend to hang on too long to a particular position or a particular situation because they are afraid of reinventing themselves. In this COVID-19 crisis, in this pandemic, we all have had to reinvent ourselves. The companies that were able to pivot much quicker are much more successful. The ones that are saying, okay, this worked before the pandemic, it's not going to work now. We need to actually see what is working right now. I have seen decisions that normally would have taken months, if not years, taken in days. In one of the companies where I am involved, we actually moved an entire organization, 8,500 people, from one day to the next during the course of a week to Microsoft Teams, so everybody could communicate virtually. Decisions are being taken. The idea of reinventing yourself and basically saying, the way I led yesterday is not going to work today. I need to reinvent myself. And this applies to leaders at every level. Just because you have chosen a certain career doesn't mean that you need to end there. It basically you can make changes, you can reinvent yourself. Next, fourth, quite frankly, nobody knows everything. And resilient people choose wise mentors, and they are comfortable actually relying on them. I mentor quite a few people, and I also am being mentored. I have several coaches who are helping me, who are a part of my inner circle, who are calling me out on things where I clearly need to improve and need to listen, because each one of us has blind spots. So leaders who pretend to know it all, please run in the opposite direction because they are dangerous. People who think they know it all are incredibly, incredibly dangerous, and they will blow up. So resilient people listen to wise counsel. They listen to mentors. There's also a fifth trait of resilient people, and that is restorable self-esteem. Everyone who has tried anything in life has made mistakes, and things may not work the way you want in a particular situation. And then you have a choice. You can basically say, I am a failure. I don't know what I'm doing. Or you can say the circumstances were such that there was nothing I could do about it. What can I learn from this? The famous psychiatrist, Dr. Henry Cloud, puts it this way. He says, when you get into the 3 Ps, you are on a very slippery slope. When adversity happens to you, and it happens to all of us, when adversity happens, you can say, this is personal. See, I'm a failure. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just so screwed up. So that's personal. It's all about me. Secondly, the second P, it's pervasive. It's personal. I really screwed this up. Not only did I not finish this or made a mess of this, everything in my life is a mess. Everything I'm touching is not working. So it's all pervasive. So you take it personal. You say, nothing I do, nothing in my life is worthwhile. And thirdly, and this is a permanent state of affairs, it's never, never going to change. So if that's the place you are in, all I can say is stop it. Snap out of it. Because you can restore your thinking. You need to renew your mind. You need to shift your mind and say, no, these circumstances were not pleasant. It was not good, but I can get out of this. So resilient people, as I point out in my book, success is dependent on resilience, on the choice to persevere. So you may ask at this point, but Herta, does it really make sense to persevere in a situation? You know, I'm confronted with a brick wall, so I'm just hitting my head against the wall and it's not changing anything. Does it really make a difference? Is there a time when I should just stop persisting? And the answer is yes. There is a time to do that. First of all, you can stop persisting after you have tried everything in your power to change the situation. So, for example, you may be in an abusive home situation, you may be in an abusive work situation. If you have done what you could to change your situation, then that would be a time to stop persevering. Secondly, if it is a matter of principle, for example, I still remember, I grew up in a communist country, so being a Christian in an atheistic country, I was expected to go to school on Saturday, which is my Sabbath, and I was able to get through things without having to go to school on Sabbath for 8 grades. But when I got to high school, I was basically told, you either come to school on Saturday or we will kick you out. And this was to me a matter of principle. And I chose at that point to just stop persisting. I didn't go to school. What I did do is find another school where I just studied on my own. And it was incredibly, incredibly challenging. But I stopped going to this particular school because it was a matter of principle for me. Thirdly, after you have stopped to learn from and properly reflect on the situation. So don't run away from something. I see people actually leaving jobs because somebody doesn't like them or somebody's not good for them or whatever. That doesn't make any sense. That's not mature. What you want to do is learn as much as you can, reflect on the situation, and then leave. When you have chosen the timing so as to give yourself the best possible step up. This is so important. I was a managing director in a major investment bank in London, and my boss was difficult to say the least. Very abusive, very difficult. And I remember one time saying to my husband, I cannot take this anymore. I'm just going to walk out. And this is where it helps when you have somebody who has your back. Because my husband said to me, if you leave now, you will regret it for the rest of your life. You stick it out until you have the right time. And that's exactly what I did. And it changed my life because when I did leave, I left on my own terms. I left because I had achieved things that I wanted to achieve. And it was time for a new chapter. Leave if you have given consideration to what comes next and how a subsequent battle could be won. So this takes an awful lot of thinking. And leave only, stop persisting when you are leaving from a position of strength. So yes, you don't want to persevere at all costs, at all times. There is a time to walk away, but make sure that you walk away from a position of strength. So why should we persevere? Ellen White, in her book Messages to Young People, says, persevere in the work you have begun until you gain victory after victory. Educate yourselves for a purpose. Keep in view the highest standard that you may accomplish greater and still greater good, thus reflecting the glory of God. So persevere until you gain victory after victory. Remember, wherever you are, leadership can be lonely, particularly as you get very senior in an organization, but you are never alone. And keep persisting. regardless of what, in order to be able to gain the victories that are in store for you. Sir Edmund Hillary, the famous climber of Mount Everest, certainly he did it with his Sherpa, and it was very much a team effort. He was often asked why he climbs mountains. And his wife was actually not very supportive, because when his wife was asked, why is your husband climbing mountains? She said, so they can get up there and hear the wind howling in their heads, in the emptiness of their heads. So his wife was not very supportive. But Sir Edmund Hillary famously said, it is not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. It is not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. And this is my experience. As we were climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, I have climbed numerous mountains, Mount Tupkel in the Atlas Mountains, Mount Meru here in Tanzania. The first time my husband and I attempted to summit Mount Kilimanjaro, it was a horrific failure. And I remember we got to the Barranco Wall at about 4,200 meters. The weather was horrible. It was raining. We were slipping and sliding. And both my husband and I felt it was too dangerous to continue. And we turned back. But just because we didn't make it the first time, that didn't mean that we were going to stop. For me, it was unfinished business. I had to go back to that mountain. And when we did it the second time, it was a very well-planned expedition. We learned a great deal from the first time when everything seemed to have gone wrong. And it is that perseverance. And I remember we were now ready to summit. It was the last stretch. We were at 4,700 meters, and we were going to take the final ascent. And our lead guide, by the name of John, he had summited Mount Kilimanjaro 26 times. He was a very experienced climber, an excellent leader, and he had been very easygoing up to this point. But when we were at 4,700 meters and we were going to take that final ascent to Uhuru Peak at 5,895 meters, that's quite a stretch, and you do it in the pitch dark. All of a sudden, John took on this very easygoing guy. All of a sudden, he behaved like a general. And this is really important. As a leader, if you want to be effective and if you really want to encourage people, you need to shift your style in line with the situation. So John, all of a sudden, he becomes a general. And he's basically saying, everybody needs to be here at 10 minutes to midnight. At 10 minutes to midnight. If you are not here, you are going to be left behind. And I saw John in this leadership mode, and that was so unusual. And I pulled him aside and I said, John, why the change? Why all of a sudden this absolute precision? And he said, Herta, I have learned over the years that people who cannot get here on time by 10 minutes to midnight will never make it to the top. It's the people who can get their act together, who can persevere, who can get here, who have a very good shot at making it to the top. So persistence is a combination of discipline. It's a combination of perseverance, because quite frankly, the reward is beautiful. And I will never forget, it was July 12th when we stood on top of Uhuru Peak. And we were incredibly fortunate because we could see the curvature of the earth. We had very good visibility. And we stood there on top of that mountain. And my husband said afterward, because he had terrible mountain sickness as we were on top of the mountain, but afterward he said, you know, the only thing that's better than standing on top of that mountain of Kilimanjaro is to stand there with people you love. The only thing that's better than standing on top of the mountain is to stand there with people you love. And you can see from this picture that John is the only one smiling because he had done it 26 times. So it kind of gets easier after a while. And that is true with anything. Leaders persevere. They are resilient. They reinvent themselves. And they finish the job. And under unusual circumstances, when they do have to walk away or they choose to walk away, they do so from a position of strength. And this is what Jesus envisioned, that the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. The one who stands firm till the end will be saved. And in the Amplified Bible, it says, he who perseveres and endures to the end will be saved. We are going through an incredibly challenging time at the moment. And regardless of where you are watching from, whether it's from Africa or Europe or the States or the Caribbean or wherever you are watching from, I know these are difficult times. But we are not in this alone. And I think we need to remind ourselves that during times of crisis, during challenging times, that is the most fruitful soil to learn. It is the most fruitful soil to actually test our mettle. I've been asked numerous times whether crises produce leaders. I don't think so. I think crises demonstrate what is there in the first place. If you are a resilient leader, if you are gold, the fire will refine you and make you more beautiful, more shiny. If you are stubble, the fire will consume you. So with that in mind, I just want to encourage you to, first of all, hang in there. Be resilient. Secondly, don't give up. This is not the time to give up. Thirdly, learn what you can from this particular crisis, from this particular pandemic, and see how you can reinvent yourself, how you can actually become better and stronger, because you're already very valuable. See how that gold can be refined, how it can become shiny and stronger for the glory of God. So let's go from victory to victory, and let's stand firm until the end. Could I invite you to bow with me for a word of prayer? Father in heaven, thank you so much that you know all our infirmities and that you have chosen to delegate authority to us as human beings, as flawed, fallible human beings. But you are standing behind us. You are standing beside us, and you have gone before us. So Lord, help us to take tremendous comfort from the fact that you never leave us nor forsake us, that you are not taking us to the bottom of the mountain and then say, it's all up to you. Lord, help us to persevere. Help us to just see how important it is not to give up, but to allow you to work in us and through us, so that that the influence that you have given us, that it would become wider and greater, that we could declare victory after victory for the glory of God, who loves us with an everlasting love. In Jesus' name I thank you. Amen.